an update of sort, and I'll be honest with you, I would not even provide this if I didn't think the person who supplied the information was credible. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know Mike Rodriguez personally, but I know of him, and I know that how media, especially in Chicago, think of him. If you don't know who Mike Rodriguez is, I'll tell you. He's an MLB insider. He's a broadcaster, former analyst for the Cubs, their Spanish-speaking broadcast. And he is well-connected in terms of baseball in Puerto Rico, baseball in the DR, and, sort of the island nation. So he's somebody who knows things is the best way to leave it. So an hour ago on Twitter, he tweeted, here it is, I'll just quote it. Source, Willson Contreras met last night with the Cardinals in Florida. It was a very productive meeting. Coming up next with the Astros, a meeting for Willson Contreras, which had been reported a lot. And Contreras is going to meet with the Astros at the winter meetings, which are in San Diego. Now, I noticed right away, if you get the usual reactions to stuff like this. You got people on Twitter who are just, why did they meet with him in Florida? I mean, doesn't it make more sense to meet with him in San Diego? I can't take this seriously. What the hell are you talking? The way people process basic information, it's astonishing to me. It's actually, if we're talking about where you have the damn meeting, the fact that the Cardinals and Willson Contreras said, hey, let's get together and really have a great talk about this and to see if we're a match or if we're a fit. See how much you want to be with us and maybe what it'll take a little bit and questions you may have about us. Let's do it in Florida where we have privacy. We're away from the teeming mobs out at the baseball meetings. You're going to be out there. Your agent's going to be out there. There's going to be a bunch of teams that want to sit down and talk. Your schedule's going to be nuts. Let's just kind of go over here where it's quiet, and then we can take our time and have a great discussion. But, of course, this is interpreted as like, well, they're meeting in Florida. How serious could this be? And then it got into the usual, and I'm exaggerating on purpose. Forgive me for being obnoxious. Then came the stream of, well, he can't even catch a pitch. Why would the Cardinals want him? All right. I'll shut up now about that. I just like the fact that they had that meeting, and I respect the reporter who filled us in on it. And I do believe I've never really deviated from the idea that if all else is equal, Contreras would really love to be a Cardinal because being a Cub all those years, he understands the baseball culture here and the setting here. He respects the Cardinals franchise. He respects Yadier Molina immensely. And he's a prideful man. I'm talking about Contreras. It actually appeals to him to be the guy who would succeed Yadier Molina. I think some catchers, and I don't blame them, would be kind of intimidated by it. They'd be like, well, I don't want to be the first guy to succeed Yadi. Maybe the second guy, maybe after someone else tries it. But no, I ain't going to be that guy. Cardinals fans will hate me because I'm not Yadi. Not Cardinals fans en masse, but yeah, there is absolutely a percentage, and I'm convinced of this, because he's not Yadi, and him and Yadi had a little bit of a rivalry. Contreras said something younger in his career where he basically said, I'm the best catcher now, And Yadier Molina took after him on Twitter or Instagram, and then Contreras apologized and has been profusely respectful of Molina. Well, he was already, but especially after that, he realized what an insult it was. So he's fearless, and he, unlike some people that might be rattled by this, the idea of being the guy who takes over for Yadi, I don't think Contreras worries about it at all. So I heard from another little birdie, and this was interesting, and this is before I knew that Contreras had a meeting with the Cardinals in Florida last night, according to Mike Rodriguez. You can follow him on Twitter, by the way, at Mike Deportes. Mike, Deportes. Another thing I heard from a little birdie is that the Cardinals management, the baseball people, even though Jose Quintana is not technically a Cardinal, he's a free agent, but he also would like to come back and really loved his experience here. They put in a call doing some of their due diligence. They called Quintana and they asked him about Contreras because he's been a teammate of Contreras, and Quintana gave them a very emphatic thumbs up. Said the guy's a great competitor. He's got a lot of pride. He wants big moments. Nothing worries him as far as like confidence, and he wants to play in a place where baseball is very important, and wants to play in a place that would give him a really good chance to win. And I believe all that, but Quintana said, "No, I don't understand where this stuff comes from. Where he's not a good enough catcher or whatever." So he gave him a rave review. And you say, "Well, maybe he's his friend. What do you accept and say?" All right, point taken, but still, Quintana strikes me as a pretty honest guy who's been through some hard times as a pitcher. So I think he knows about what a catcher can do for you. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. But he's going to meet with Houston, and depending on how frisky the owner and the general manager and the manager of the Astros, that would be Jim Crane. He's all three.
Yes.
I know he's not in the dugout. So depending on how Jimmy Baseball Crane, how prepared he's to spend money, turn on the charm, whatever it may be. I mean, Houston. If I'm Contreras, I mean, this has nothing to do bad about St. Louis. But if you ask, I would say 98%, maybe 99% of major league hitters who have some power say, well, where would you rather set up 81 games a year? Minute Maid Park or Busch Stadium? I think it'd be I think the percentage would be immense in favor of Minute Maid Park. I mean, can you imagine Contreras just destroying objects, perhaps even damaging fans who were sitting in the Crawford boxes?
Agreed.
Ain't no Crawford boxes at Busch, baby. I love Busch. Ain't no Crawford boxes there, though.
Agreed.
So So if the Astros really want to make a generous offer, and I don't even know how to define that because I'm not sure what Contreras is looking for, but if they go all out, I don't know why he wouldn't sign there. But it's just interesting because the people who somehow, for some reason, are just like unnerved about this idea of Contreras coming to St. Louis. If you're really unnerved, why? But they are. I'm kind of laughing because by now I think a lot of us had the feeling like, well, it's just not meant to be. And it may not be meant to be. I'm talking about Cardinals and Contreras. It may not be a match. It may not be the thing that's going to happen. It's a thing that at one point looked like really good chance would happen. And then everything went quiet, and then you heard about the Astros, you heard about this, you heard about that. And, you have all the nervous Nelsons and Nellies in the St. Louis media talking about Contreras, and, they're almost like I can see him trembling in fear for some reason. Yeah, you got to go get Tucker Barnhart. No, actually, no, you don't. So for all of the whispering and all of the high anxiety over him, and people don't want a Cub replacing, succeeding Yadier Molina, and these attempts to make him sound much, much worse than he is defensively. And I've done the thorough research on that. His framing skills are not good, but they're not awful. And you're going to have the automated strike zone coming in soon anyway. But, if you want to upgrade your catching position and sacrifice not a lot, but some defense for definite improvement offensively at the position, where it has been an absolute embarrassment the last 3 years. Well, this is Sean Murphy's the guy, but if you're not going to trade for him, and there's so many teams pursuing that, if you don't want to give up the price, whatever Oakland's asking for, then the guy who could upgrade your position the most would be Willson Contreras. Over the last 3 seasons, he's 4th among catchers in wins above replacement. And the guys ahead of him are Realmuto, Murphy, and Will Smith of the Dodgers. And Contreras is a close 4th. And if you look at, where he is in home runs over the last 3 seasons, he ranks tied for 3rd among catchers. His RBI count is like top 5. Let me look at slugging here real quick. Slugging, among people that have had 1,000 or more plate appearances over that time, he would be like 4th in slugging, but it's pretty close. Actually, yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, there's not, interestingly enough at Fangraphs, for all this huffing and puffing about how bad he is defensively, over the last 3 seasons, they have him as a plus 8% defensively. And really that's down the list a little bit, but not as bad as you would think. So do you want, depending on how you look at wins above replacement, do you want someone who's been the 3rd or 4th best catcher in baseball over the last 3 years? Or do you want to settle for, I'm not going to disrespect Christian Vasquez because I do respect him, but he ain't going to hit the way Contreras hits. And I do think he's better defensively, but I was hoping the Cardinals come out of this with someone at the catcher spot that can hit and upgrade their offense, because they really are going to need to have to do that. And I think they know it. But that doesn't mean they're willing to pay whatever it is Contreras wants. It doesn't mean they're going to do it. It doesn't mean that the meeting was great. Everything's on track. Maybe the meeting wasn't great. I don't know, even though, again, Rodriguez insists that it was a really good meeting, and I believe him. So we'll see what happens. But if you even want to take it back a year just to get as much, as much information as possible, yeah, he's, we're basically talking about a top 5 catcher when you put it all together. Offense, defense, base running. Over the last 3 years, if you want to take it back to 4 years, however you want to do this, and he certainly, in terms of a comparison to catchers, certainly. An upgrade for the Cardinals offense if they would bring him in. And again, I would prefer Sean Murphy, but maybe the Cardinals are spooked by what the A's are asking for there, So maybe they pivot back to Contreras. I'm just throwing things out there right now. So what do you think, Jim?
I'm leery of the organization thinking, look, first off, was it a couple of weeks ago, John Mozeliak said, catcher's our top priority, but he kind of hinted around it. Hey, we're really looking on defense on the catcher side. And I hope they don't fall into this thinking and philosophy that we're going to get a defensive guy first, and thinking, and also just having the feel that because we had Yadier Molina and his defensive skills, the next guy is going to be that kind of guy, and he's going to shut down run games, and I just think that's unrealistic to sit here and think you're just going to go all defense. I would be more than willing to sacrifice and get some more offense and give up a little on the defensive side. And that's why a guy like Contreras is really intriguing. And, yes, if you say you got the right deal in place to get Murphy, from what I've seen of him or what I've heard of him, because I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of Oakland, I would go, okay, because it seems like everybody, and I mean everybody you read and listen to, he is the next step from a Realmuto or somebody like that, and I'm speaking of Murphy. Okay, if you can get it, go get it. But if not, don't sit here and tell me, well, I'm going to get the defensive guy next. Give me some offense. I think this lineup is starved for a little help from the catching position in that lineup. It's okay to not go all Yadier Molina on the defensive side in terms of quality, because I think that's unrealistic. So sacrifice some defense and go get a guy who can help your offense. That's just my feel on that. And if they came to me, Bernie, today and said Willson Contreras is going to be the guy, good. Okay, I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. Let's let the guy come up with 20 homers and 20 doubles out of the catching position, because that hadn't happened around here a lot lately. I think Yanni had 120 home run season. But it's okay. It's all right to sacrifice some defense every once in a while. And the last thing I'll say about this, and we've had this discussion before too, it was always, well, he didn't study, Well, that's on the organization. I really believe it's on the organization to go, hey, Willson, let's stay focused on this in our meetings. Understand what you need to know. This is what you need to understand to help our pitchers get through it. I mean, I think sometimes, Bernie, when there's this conversation, well, he can't do this, he can't do that because he didn't. Well, sometimes that's on you as an organization to go, you focus on this. Focus here. This is really what I need. These are the numbers. These are the ideals that we're going to have here, and you need to be part of that. But if Wilson's here, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I just and people, we all have to remember. And I'm going to look something up, so I apologize for this, but it's the only, really the only way to do this right. So I ask for your patience because I'll have this popped up here in a minute. But I just want to remind everyone how the only reason I'm doing this is I want to remind everyone just how awful the Cardinals have been at that position offensively. So I'll just take the last 2 years because they're the most relevant years, and the Cardinals, in terms of offense from the catching position in Major League Baseball, let's see, batting average 235 is 21st. On base percentage, down the list, way down the list. I can't even find them, but not very good. They're way down the list. I'll leave it at that. Now, if we're looking at the slugging percentage, and for some reason this search engine is not. I know what I did wrong. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Here we go. My bad. All right. Let's look at batting average. They're 19th over the last 2 seasons at the catcher position, 222. Their on base percentage is 25th at 278. Their slugging percentage was 27th the last 2 years, 318. Ouch. Their OPS was 26th, less than 600, and using that park and league adjusted runs created, the Cardinals offensively from the catcher's position in the last 2 years, 26th at 32% below average. And talking about home runs, 21 over the last 2 seasons, and RBIs way down the list again. Their RBIs about 50, about 60 RBIs per season. But the point is, they're like in basically the bottom 5, and it was even worse this past year. But I'm trying to be fair and just kind of spread it out over 2 years. But it was even worse this past season. It was awful this past season. In fact, let's do that since I have this screen up. And I thank you all for your patience. But I'm just trying to give you the stat based perspective on this. Like if you look at the Cardinals catchers and what they did in 2022, 9 home runs. 9 home runs. We're talking in terms of RBIs. We're talking 48 RBIs, which is third worst. They hit 209, which is about 23rd. They in terms of the on base percentage, 26th. Slugging percentage, 28th. Slugging percentage under 300, by the way.
Wow.
And and their OPS was 552, which is 28th. So too many people, in my opinion, are making too big of a deal about defense. It is important, absolutely. But the Cardinals, after losing Pujols and all the unexpected goodness that he provided, and the fact that the Cardinals, the last 2 seasons combined, ranked dead last in the majors at wins above replacement from the catcher position. So it's the worst catching performance in the majors, all entailing all aspects. And so I'm not sure why there is a fetish, about pitch framing and the fact that Contreras is below average in pitch framing, but he's not embarrassing. He's not awful. It's not something where you look at that and you're like, wow. It just isn't going to make that much difference especially when you're trying to have good offense at the catcher position for the first time for a long time. And to break away from this mold where the last 2 seasons you have the worst catching in baseball, which, by the way, WAR includes defense.
Yes.
So yet it's just astonishing to me that people would be willing to write this off offensively to get a catcher who would be only slightly better defensively than Contreras. And some of the scrappy guys that we hear so much, their pitch framing ain't no great shakes either. They have the reputation. See, I think that's what's happened to Contreras. I think a lot of this is reputation and perception,
That's
and
true.
It takes hold, and I get it. I succumb to that stuff. I get it. But if you're a nut like me and you spend hours researching things, you find out that it's not quite as bad as some people would like you to believe. I'm not saying it's great, but I don't know. You're losing Pujols 24 bombs. You're relying on O'Neill bouncing back. You're relying on Carlson bouncing back. You're relying on all these things, right?
Yes.
Got a chance to get a catcher who can hit and who can hold his own and is solid, decent enough behind the plate. What's the problem? What the heck's the problem? I don't get it.
You gave numbers there on the Cardinals' catching position in terms of the offense. I mean, when you were giving it, I'm going, well, that's not much better. It is a little, but not much better than going, well, we're just going to have the pitcher hit. And some of those years where you had a decent hitting staff. I mean, that's embarrassing to have that.
It is, right?
It's like, wait a minute. So you just gave away an out in your 8th spot because it was the 8th spot every night. You knew that's where the catcher's batting tonight for the Cardinals. It's going to bat 8th. We want the second leadoff guy batting 9th with the DH. That's unacceptable for a team that wants to challenge for a division, challenge to get into the playoffs. You can't go into the situation with that as dragging you down. I mean, that's like a lead weight pulling you back, and you really hamstring yourself. They have to be better at this. They got to want to be better at this. I hope they are. And I agree with the way you described. Look, Pujols is going. They need more offense. Why not help your offense by going, hey, yeah, we're going to add some offense through the catcher position. Not just go, well, if Tyler O'Neill doesn't get back to 30 and 80, we're in trouble. That's not the way to go about this. You need to strengthen it from all angles, and this would be a great opportunity to do it. I just don't know where they're headed with it.
The last 2 seasons combined, and this is just one of those quick and dirty stats. It's at Fangraphs where I just looked it up, and it's an overall defensive rating at the catcher position. So over the last 2 years combined, the Cardinals were better than the Cubs, who had Contreras, but we're not talking about a huge gap. The Cardinals were ranked 21st in catcher defense by Fangraphs. The Cubs were ranked 26th, and both of them were still in the positive side. It isn't, Chicago, in other words, did not have negative defensive work behind the plate. The number of the numbers on the plus side, it's just not as big as some other numbers out there, including the Cardinals. But there's nothing there. When you look at the offensive trade-off, there's nothing there where you say, "Oh no, that's a deal killer," because whereas the Cubs in the last two seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last two seasons, the Cubs offensively at the catcher position ranked 6th. And the Cardinals at the catcher position ranked 27th. See, now that's a gap, right?
Huge gap.
So if you're talking about 2+ defenses at the catcher position, Cardinals 21st, Cubs 26th, over the last 2 years, let's look at that difference. Is that a huge difference? Is one team up at 3 and the other one at 28? No. One's at 21 and the other is at 26 in the defensive rankings. However, now let's talk offense. Do it again. One team is at number 6 the last 2 years and the other team is at number 27. So I repeat, what is this phony, fake, these coronary episodes over Contreras' defense when he clearly is capable of elevating your offense at the catcher position in a way you haven't had it since Molina had his peak years, when he was in fact really good offensively. So we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about worst defensive history catching or whatever it is. But also ignore the fact that we're talking about a Cardinals team who's been absolutely embarrassing, virtually bankrupt when it comes to offense from the catcher position. And then we're going to ignore that, and we're also going to ignore the fact that the Cubs had about a top 6 offense at that position in the last couple of years. Cool. See, yeah. Now there's a way to hit. Yeah, so much for objectivity, right?
Should have been here a day ago. That's my response. We'll see what happens.
Now, I don't know if they're going to get him. And I think Houston would be a sensible front runner for him. I don't know what the Cardinals want to pay. I don't know how cheap they are. I don't know if they want to give up the draft pick compensation. And I'll pause why everyone starts clutching rosary beads over that. There's not another baseball market that I'm aware of where you go on the fan forums or whatever, and it's people are clutching rosary beads and burning candles because they might have to give up a second-round draft pick to sign a guy. Here it's viewed as, this franchise will never recover from that. Now, listen, I'm exaggerating and being an idiot, but I like to have fun with this stuff. I just don't understand the angst over that. I just don't.
You get a guy who can be an everyday catcher. If I told you, hey, I got an everyday catcher and I'm going to take him in the second round, you would go, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. I got a guy who could start for me next year and be an everyday catcher. I got to give up a second-round pick. Okay, I'm good with it.
Yeah, no problem, right?
Yeah.
But again, I listen, I'm only talking, a lot about Contreras right now because there was some news on that front, and I thought it's a good time to revisit the bigger picture with him. I'd be happy to have him here. I think, first of all, another thing, and if those who listen to the show a lot or semi-regularly, and if I know Jim Hewer has heard this a bunch of times, I'll tell you another thing. You know what? Another thing I want?
That's
behind the plate. One thing I say all the time: Cardinals are too nice, and that's really great if you're running a charitable organization or leading the Boy Scouts or whatever. I don't know. That's great stuff. Who doesn't want nice people, good human beings, right? But they have this nice guys club, and where's the edge? Where's the nastiness, the competitive nastiness? Where is I'm going to rip your throat apart attitude? Where is the stuff that we saw from Bryce Harper and Schwarber and Real Muto and even those Houston Astros, those pitchers? Nastiness, sharp edge. Don't mess with these people. They can have a good time, but when it's time to make the kill, they'll get their hands dirty. You'll get their hands bloody, metaphorically speaking, of course. You're losing one of your great edge guys in the history of the franchise in Yadier Molina. Someone who not only very, very talented catcher, obviously, perhaps the greatest defensive catcher of all time. What else did Yadier Molina bring to this franchise since he came up as a rookie in 2004? Well, I can tell you, one of the things he did, he displayed that almost immediately because in the 2004 World Series in Game 3 here in St. Louis, he caught Manny Ramirez peeking down to try to steal the sign that Molina was given to the pitcher. And Molina, who was a baby, immediately bounced up from his squat and got into the face of Manny Ramirez, who probably had no idea who Yadier Molina was. He got up into his grill and barked at him and warned him. And as I was told later, just said, if you do that again, I'm going to knock you on your ass. If you've had that kind of catcher, a catcher with attitude, a catcher, to use a James Brown song, Papa don't take no mess. Contreras is wired the same way. And yet, again, you get this insane pushback. The town that loves Molina, as they should, as we should. It's like, well, his pitch framing's like ranked 19th, you know. Come on, man. You give me a guy that's wired the way Molina is wired and a guy who, as a young catcher himself, Willson Contreras, had no problem getting up in somebody's face. He had no problem even ticking off Yadier Molina. You know, so, yeah, go ahead if you all want the scrappy guy, the nice guy, you know, oh, he fits in great. Him and Waino can yuck it up and everyone will be laughing and dancing in the dugout. And, oh, our guys they're all so nice. Hey, it's one of the reasons why asses are getting kicked in the postseason around here. Trust me.
Could use a little bite back, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Again, it's astounding that, you know, the fact that the Cardinals and Cubs are arch rivals, and everybody pays a lot of attention to the Cubs, or so I thought, and things like that. And it's like, yet they don't seem to get I don't know that there's a good read here in terms of Contreras' personality. There should be a great read here where you're really familiar with his personality. So I don't know whether it's just a misunderstanding or what, or just an anti-Cubs factor. I don't know. But I'm going on, you know, I've gone on and on about this, so I'll shut up. But I think it's just a great topic. I mean, I think it's a really interesting conversation. Now, I hurt myself by being too obnoxious about it, but what I don't know what to say.
It is, look.
I am who I am.
It's all good. That's what we like.
I like to be sarcastic.
We like that. It is a big decision here. I mean,
Yeah.
if they pick the wrong one, you know, like we're discussing, and you go, oh, boy, really? We're stuck with that again. That's going to be a huge blow to this possible lineup improvement that they need to have happen. Not that they're thinking about. They need that to happen. So we'll see.
And, you know, and I listen, I know I'm extending this, so I apologize. But, you know that we had Dave Kaplan on from Chicago, NBC Sports Chicago. I know it was one of our times at Friendlies. He called in, or it might have been the time before that. And I asked him specifically about Contreras because he knows him really well. And Dave Kaplan told us a story about how feisty Contreras is. And he, you know, again, Papa don't take no mess. But he's, you know, respected across the board in the clubhouse because people know he's a great competitor. And Cap had said something about him on TV or Twitter.
That's right, yeah. And
Contreras kind of took it the wrong way. Cap didn't mean it as like nasty as it appeared, and I think Contreras just didn't get the point or whatever, and that happens too. That's one of the dangers of social media. Things get lost in translation. But they had a talk, and, you know, Kaplan said something to the effect of, you know, you're my son's favorite player. And so I can't have my son's favorite player mad at me over something that we shouldn't have been getting mad about because it just wasn't that big of a deal. And Contreras agreed. And one thing led to another, and they were talking about Cap's son. And the next thing you know, Contreras invited himself to dinner and went and broke bread with Cap and his son and family and just had a delightful time. So there's a guy who, from that story and others, appears to be actually a very nice guy. But the difference is when he is in the field of competition, he's not a nice guy. That's what you want.
100%.
You know?
Gotta have some
All
bark.
right. I know. So, yeah, I mean, it's really – I'm going to have to get – well, we'll get Cap on here if it looks like anything serious is going to develop on this front. But no need to do it now.